The woman had just boarded the plane and was getting ready to sleep when, out of nowhere, the plane began a rapid descent. The captain quickly turned around and urged Anna to fasten her seatbelt. Moments later, the plane plunged straight into the forest. Fortunately, the captain managed to pull the plane up just in time, avoiding a crash. But before they could catch their breath, the plane completely lost control and crashed into a lake with a loud bang. When Anna regained consciousness, she found herself hanging upside down in the cabin. Using all her strength, she managed to right herself, but before she could even take a breath, she heard cries for help. Both pilots were trapped in their seats in the cockpit. Anna quickly rushed to help, first unbuckling the co-pilot's seatbelt. While she successfully freed him, the co-pilot couldn't swim, having never learned. Anna quickly advised him to find a life preserver to stay safe. She then turned her attention to the captain, racing against time to free him as well. However, after unbuckling his seatbelt, the captain didn't fall as expected. His leg had been impaled by a piece of debris. To make things worse, the co-pilot hadn't found a life preserver either. As the water level in the cabin continued to rise, panic set in. Without warning, the co-pilot opened the cabin door and escaped on his own. Anna hadn't realized the lake was over 100 meters deep. Despite swimming for what felt like ages, she was still only halfway to the surface. Just as despair started to set in, a soft ray of sunlight pierced through the water. Summoning the last bit of her strength, Anna finally reached the surface, just before running out of oxygen. Barely escaping the depths of the lake, Anna was almost killed by one of her fellow survivors. The co-pilot, who still couldn't swim, flailed wildly, desperately trying to stay afloat. Anna, trying to help, approached him, but the co-pilot, in his panic, grabbed onto her and began to push her under in an attempt to stay above water. Thankfully, Anna managed to break free just in time, avoiding drowning. After that, she wisely kept her distance from the co-pilot and taught him a few basic survival tips. Then, positioning herself behind him, she dragged him toward the shore. After a long struggle, they finally made it to the edge of the lake. Just when they thought they were safe, something else went wrong. The woman shouted for help into the distance, but no matter how much she screamed, no one would hear her. After calming down, she gathered some dry wood, intending to start a fire for warmth. However, after several attempts, the lighter wouldn't work. It had been ruined by the water. Anna fell into complete despair. If only she hadn't boarded a stranger's plane, she wouldn't be in this situation. Before long, her stomach began to growl. She rummaged through her pockets and finally found 2 small packets of crackers. While it wasn't much, it would at least help her survive for a few more days. That night, the temperature in the valley dropped sharply. She put on her clothes and gathered some leafy branches, covering the man to prevent him from freezing to death. Then, she snuggled up next to him. Though they had only met less than a day ago, the man's presence provided her with a small sense of warmth. The next morning, Anna awoke and immediately checked on the man. Although his wound had stopped bleeding, it appeared to be infected. Soon after, she heard the man groaning in pain. Anna was overjoyed. The man, who had been unconscious for 2 days, had finally woken up. But then he suddenly complained of stomach pain. Confused, Anna quickly lifted his shirt, and what she saw shocked her. His skin was turning a sickly black and purple, clearly indicating that his internal organs had suffered severe damage from the crash. However, she chose to keep this to herself. She urgently asked the man when his colleagues would come to rescue them, reasoning that the plane hadn't reached its destination, so someone must have realized something had gone wrong. But the man hesitated, stammering for a while before finally revealing the truth to Anna. He wasn't actually a pilot at all. Everything had been a lie that he and the now deceased man had concocted. Before he could explain further, he died. Anna was plunged into deep despair. She knew how dire her situation was and even considered taking her own life. But just at that critical moment, some debris from the plane floated to the shore. As she picked it up, she realized it was the medical report she hadn't had the chance to open before the crash. The report revealed she was pregnant. The man discovered something shocking outside the hotel. He saw his wife laughing and chatting with another man. Furious, Jack stormed into the hotel and confronted his wife, demanding to know why she was treating him this way. But to his surprise, Mary acted like she didn't even know him. She coldly asked, "Do we know each other?" Jack was stunned. He couldn't believe his wife would shamelessly pretend not to recognize him. Just as he was about to lose his temper, things took an even more bizarre turn. Mary called over another man and introduced him as her husband, claiming this was her real spouse. When Jack glanced at the name on the man's badge, he was completely dumbfounded. The hotel manager assumed Jack was causing trouble and quickly arranged for security to escort him out. They even pulled up the hotel's front desk surveillance footage to confirm what had happened, but to Jack's shock, the footage showed no trace of him at all. Jack tried to explain that he was outside handling luggage while his wife checked in alone. He recalled that one of their suitcases, the most important one, was missing and likely left behind at the airport. Determined to retrieve it, he had gone to the airport alone. However, on his way there, something unexpected happened. The car he was in swerved to avoid a fallen refrigerator and plunged into a river. The violent impact knocked him unconscious. Thankfully, the driver managed to break the window and pull him out just in time. When Jack woke up again, he was in a hospital. A doctor explained that he had been in a car accident and had been in a coma for 4 days. Jack told them he was a biology PhD, traveling to Germany with his wife to attend an academic conference. He insisted that the man pretending to be him was an imposter. They decided to search online for information about Dr. Jack. To Jack's horror, the photos they found matched the man Mary was with, not him. Jack had no response. The hotel manager became even more convinced that Jack was making trouble. Seeing the police standing in front of him, Jack had no choice but to back down. He offered the doctor's business card as proof, explaining that he had just been in a car accident and might be experiencing memory issues. Moved by his sincere apology, the hotel decided not to pursue the matter further. Jack then thought of contacting a friend back home, but no one answered his calls. Just as he hung up the phone, he noticed something strange. A car in the distance seemed to have been following him for quite some time. At that moment, Jack realized things were far more complicated than they seemed. The man walked into a narrow underground tunnel, and sure enough, it wasn't long before hurried footsteps echoed behind him. This confirmed his suspicion. He was being followed. Jack quickly ran toward the platform, and in the very last second before the subway doors closed, managed to lose his pursuer. But the empty train car only made him feel more uneasy. Taking out his notebook, he began writing down every fragment of memory he could recall. Using the images in his mind, he tracked down the taxi company that owned the cab involved in his accident. Jack pretended he wanted to thank the driver for saving him, which eventually led him to meet the driver, Anna, at a restaurant. He tried to confirm where he had originally gotten into the car, but Anna was reluctant to talk, fearing she might lose her job because of the incident. Seeing her hesitation, Jack had no choice but to leave in frustration. He then went to a research facility, hoping to find the professor who had invited him to the summit. Although they had never met in person, Jack believed the professor could confirm his identity. But the moment Jack stepped into the room, he froze in shock. The man impersonating him was already standing beside the professor. To prove his identity, Jack brought up details of their past conversations, even sharing information only the two of them could possibly know. However, to Jack's horror, the imposter began speaking as well, recounting those same private details with equal accuracy. The professor, caught in the middle, looked utterly bewildered. Just then, the police arrived. The imposter quickly presented his credentials, but what truly stunned Jack was when the man produced photos of himself with Mary, Jack's wife, during their supposed dates. The handwriting and markings on the photos were clear, leaving Jack speechless. Slowly, doubt began to creep into his mind. For the first time, he wondered if he was the one who was mistaken. Overwhelmed, Jack's head spun, and he collapsed. When he woke up, he was back in the hospital. The doctors, hoping to speed up his recovery, ran more tests. But as he emerged from the machine, Jack was startled to see the same man who had been following him standing nearby. By then, Jack had already been injected with sedatives and was too weak to resist. He could only watch helplessly as the man had took full control of the situation. Yet in that moment, Jack's lingering doubts vanished. He was certain those memories belonged to him, and no one could take them away. One night, an elderly woman discovered something unsettling while she was asleep. She found a tape left behind by her late husband, who had been dead for many years. What shocked her even more was the content of the tape, which showed a girl going through something deeply painful. To avoid bringing scandal to her family, the woman decided to hire a famous private detective named Jack. At first, Jack thought it was just an ordinary videotape, but the woman insisted that he watch it before making any conclusions. Reluctantly, Jack agreed to view the tape, and what he saw left him completely stunned. He suggested handing the footage over to the police for an investigation, but both the woman and her lawyer strongly opposed the idea. Their family was highly prominent in the area, and they couldn't afford to have their reputation tarnished by this matter. The woman promised Jack a substantial payment if he agreed to take on the case and investigate the truth. Jack concluded that the girl in the video was the key to unraveling the mystery. If he could identify her, he could trace the origins of the recording. Once he returned home, Jack packed his belongings and prepared to start the investigation. Before leaving, he also grabbed his handgun, perhaps realizing this case could turn out to be very dangerous. Jack went to the police station and presented a sketch of the girl based on what he had seen in the tape. However, the police told him the search would be extremely difficult. Every year, over 1 million people go missing, and while some have registered photos, finding a match among them would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Left with no other choice, Jack began patiently combing through records himself. Days passed with no progress, and he was growing increasingly frustrated. Then, one day, while rewatching the tape at home, Jack noticed a crucial detail. The man in the video had a tattoo on his head. Encouraged by this discovery, Jack continued analyzing the footage and found yet another clue. In the corner of the screen, he spotted the name of a film company. However, after some digging, he learned that the company had gone out of business 8 years ago. This meant the tape was likely recorded 8 years prior. After spending nearly half a month searching through archives, Jack finally found information about the missing girl in police records. Her name was Mary, and the report clearly showed that she had been declared missing in 1993. This meant that after filming the video, Mary had never returned home. The man pulled out a stack of journals from the toilet tank, carefully preserved in plastic wrapping. It turned out that the missing girl, Mary, had known a boy named Carl back in the day. Unable to endure the abuse from her stepfather, she decided to leave with Carl for Hollywood to chase her dream of becoming a star. When leaving, Jack chose not to tell Mary's mother about the journals. Instead, he hurried to Carl's house. Carl's father, a car mechanic, greeted Jack, who claimed he owed Carl a lot of money and had come to repay it. To Jack's surprise, the old man told him that Carl was currently serving time in prison. Jack went to the prison and found Carl. Carl revealed that he and Mary had broken up before they ever made it to Los Angeles. After that, he never saw her again. Under Jack's persistent questioning, Carl scoffed, saying Mary was completely delusional. She dreamed of becoming a Hollywood star, but with her talent, she might only land a supporting role, or more realistically, be found in some underground venues. With this lead, Jack immediately drove to Hollywood. He scoured various underground establishments based on Carl's information, but still found no trace of Mary. Then, one day in a bookstore, as he approached the counter to pay, he suddenly noticed a familiar mask. Realizing he might be close to a breakthrough, Jack returned to his motel and carefully reviewed the footage again. This time, he made a startling discovery. Behind the man in the mask, there appeared to be another head faintly visible in the background. Thinking there might be someone else involved, Jack printed out the frame and took it to a professional for enhancement. Sure enough, a blurry silhouette emerged. Determined to dig deeper into the local underground film industry, Jack revisited the bookstore and spoke to the clerk at the counter. Sensing Jack's curiosity, the clerk led him to a small door in the back. Jack persuaded him, offering a generous commission in exchange for information. What Jack didn't realize, however, was that someone was secretly watching his every move.